History of the cooperative.
During ancient times, proofs of human groupings were discovered in caves, valleys, rivers, lakes, and seas. During medieval times, agricultural production stimulated the creation of markets. Surplus products and raw materials were sold. At this economic stage, people no longer produced only what they could consume. They had to produce more to acquire more money from their own needs and comforts. Thus, trade and commerce developed and prospered. As early as 300 BC, the Greeks had formed associations known as aranoi, which were organized in Teutonic Europe between the 17th and 15th centuries. Merchant guilds, arising from the need to protect their social and economic gains, conducted business over long distances by the 12th century. They performed all the operations in merchandising goods, transporting, and retailing. By the 12th century, all types of crafts guilds start splitting off and formed organizations. The Industrial Revolution started in the 18th century in England. It changed the social and economic life of the people. The introduction of machines in factories caused misfortunes to many people who had depended mainly on weaving for their livelihood. The traditional industries were rendered unprofitable by other factories that utilized better machines and technology. The cooperative movement began in Britain in the 19th century in response to the Industrial Revolution and the economic transformations that were threatening the livelihoods of many workers. There were earlier efforts by workers to form cooperatives. The Shore Porters Society claims to be one of the world's first cooperatives, being established in Aberdeen, Scotland, in 1498. The Fenwick Weavers' Society in 1761 fostered high standards in the weaving craft, but activities later expanded to include collective purchasing of bulk food items and books. In 1769, members formed a consumer cooperative and manhandled a sack of oatmeal into John Walker's whitewashed front room and began selling the contents at a discount. In the decades that followed, more Scottish cooperatives formed, including Lennoxtown Friendly Victualling Society, founded in 1812. The focus of the Lennoxtown group was operation of the busy Lennox Mill, where tenants of the Woodhead estate brought their corn to be ground. The printing of calico and other cotton cloth was soon established as a major industry in the area. Cooperative banks, or credit unions, were invented in Germany in the mid-19th century. By 1830, several hundred cooperatives had been formed. Some were initially successful, but most had failed by 1840. It was not until 1844, when a cooperative society established the Rochdale Principles, on which they ran their co-op, that the basis for development and growth of the modern cooperative movement was established. In 1844, a group of 28 artisans working in the cotton mills in the town of Rochdale, in the north of England, established the first modern cooperative business, the Rochdale Equitable Pioneers Society. Initially, there were only 4 items for sale. These are flour, oatmeal, sugar, and butter. On December 21, 1844, they opened their store for only 2 nights a week. Within 3 months they expanded their selection to include tea and tobacco, and the business had grown so much that it was open 5 days a week. They were soon known for providing high-quality, unadulterated goods. The original Rochdale principles defining cooperative organizations were democratic control, open membership, limited interest on capital, distribution of surplus in proportion to a member's contribution to the society, cash trading only, no use of credit, providing for the education of members in cooperative principles, and political and religious neutrality. These have evolved somewhat over time, and the International Cooperative Alliance, the official governing body of cooperatives, now considers the first 4 of the Rochdale Principles central to the governance of member organizations, with the last 3 deemed important but not vital. The fact of the matter is that many cooperatives have very clear political or religious agendas. Most also use credit as a means of sale. Robert Owen is the first cooperative theorist and credited with inspiring the Rochdale pioneers, who in 1844 began the cooperative movement at Rochdale, Lancashire. Owen believed in putting his workers in a good environment with access to education for themselves and their children. These ideas were put into effect successfully in the cotton mills of New Lanark, Scotland. Owen had the idea of forming villages of cooperation, where workers would drag themselves out of poverty by growing their own food, making their own clothes and ultimately becoming self-governing. Dr. William King believed in starting small, and realized that the working classes would need to set up cooperatives for themselves, so he saw his role as one of instruction. He founded a monthly periodical called The Cooperator, the first edition of which appeared on May 1, 1828. This gave a mixture of cooperative philosophy and practical advice about running a shop using cooperative principles. He proposed sensible rules, such as having a weekly account audit, having 3 trustees, and not having meetings in pubs, to avoid the temptation of drinking profits. Charles Fourier the pioneers established the first consumer cooperative, leading to a worldwide movement. They also experimented with a producer cooperative, which soon failed. Beatrice Webb was the author of the cooperative movement in Great Britain, 1891. The Rochdale pioneers, as they became known, set out the Rochdale Principles in 1844, which have been highly influential throughout the cooperative movement. In modern form, cooperatives date from 1844, then a group of 28 impoverished weavers of Rochdale, England, founded a mutual aid society, called the Rochdale Society of Equitable Pioneers. The successful example of cooperative business provided by the Rochdale Society, which also established between 1850 and 1855 were a flour mill, a shoe factory, and textile plant, was quickly emulated throughout the country. World Cooperative Movement. Worldwide, some 800 million people are members of cooperatives, and it is estimated that cooperatives employ some 100 million people. Notable among the European countries in which consumer cooperation received early popular support were France, Germany, Belgium, Austria, Italy, Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden. Credit unions are also established in the UK. The largest are work-based, but many are now offering services in the wider community. The Association of British Credit Unions Limited represents the majority of British credit unions. British building societies developed into general-purpose savings and banking institutions with one member, one vote ownership and can be seen as a form of financial cooperative, although many demutualized into conventionally owned banks in the 1980s and 1990s. Members of a building cooperative pool resources to build housing, normally using a high proportion of their own labor. When the building is finished, each member is the sole owner of a homestead, and the cooperative may be dissolved. History of cooperatives in the Philippines. Filipinos who have traveled Europe in the later part of the 19th century must have been impressed with the success of a new economic movement, bringing about a gradual transformation in the economic and social life of the people. At the turn of the century, Filipinos, in increasing number, traveled and studied abroad and brought home with them new ideas. Two names worthy of note were Dr. Jose P. Rizal and Teodoro Sandico. In Dapitan, Rizal had his ideas in cooperation partially fulfilled. He put up a school for the poor community and a store with the help of his pupils on a purely cooperative basis. One noteworthy group organized by Rizal was a La Sociedad de los Abacaleros, Society of Abaca Producers. This functioned for only 1 year. Rizal returned the members' share capital without any loss. Teodoro Sandico, in his travels to Europe, must have had a close contact with the cooperative movement in Germany, where he came across with the Raiffeisen movement. He was very much impressed by this type of cooperative that he looked forward for an opportunity to introduce it in the Philippines. The administration of the rural credit law was entrusted to the Bureau of Agriculture. The first rural credit association that was organized under this law was the Agricultural Credit Cooperative Association of Cabanatuan, Nueva Ecija. It was formed on October 18, 1916. With this initial organization, farmers in different provinces were organized. At the end of 1926 there were 544 rural credit cooperatives organized in 42 provinces, and by 1930 there were 571 associations formed all over the country. In 1935, however, about 90% of these cooperatives were inactive with no funds left in their treasury. The Cooperative Marketing Law, Act 2425, was enacted and approved on December 9, 1927. By 1939 only 164 societies were actually organized with a total membership of around 5,000 farmers. With this number only 35 reported their sale of products to the Bureau of Commerce. The number of associations reporting indicated that only 20% of the organized associations were active. In recognition of the strategic position occupied by our farmers in the social structure and economic development of the country, the Philippine Congress enacted Republic Act 821 in 1952. This law established a system of liberal credit which is specially designed to meet the needs of the small farmers. It also created an administrative agency known as the Agricultural Credit and Cooperative Financing Administration. Special thanks to our beloved Professor Mun Ellen and to the people behind the production of this video.